Well, thanks very much for having me this evening. I always look forward to a chance to get to know the community better. Just moved to Princeton a little over 3 years ago. And I thought what I would do is talk a little bit about the evolution of this project, because it in itself kind of reflects the transformation of the video industry. Because my background is traditional TV news, and I've been in it long enough that my first story was shot on film. And, we dealt with satellite transmission, and we had engineers who were really happy with coax cables because you plug one in and you get a picture, so that's where I came from. And I came to Princeton on a teaching fellowship to teach a course about international TV news, which is what I knew most about. And I quickly realized that not that many of the kids in my class really saw much relevance to TV news. So the next time I taught, I had to revamp the curriculum completely and also do a fair amount of homework on exactly what the new news sources were and how they were produced and how they were distributed and how people make their choices and all of that sort of thing. In the course of this, this idea was born in my head, and I thought, well, here I am in Princeton. There are all these great talks going on. I wonder if people are taping them. Turns out they were. I wonder what they do with the tapes. Nothing. Yes. Why? Because they don't know what to do with them. It's a university. It's not a video production center. Did they have an access channel? Yes. Did they put anything on it? No, because again, no one has the time, no one has the interest. It's just Princeton Township anyway. So I thought, well, would you mind if I take one of these tapes and run it across campus down to New South and hand it over to the guys at Media Services, and they plug it in the playback. So fine, we got the access channel kind of going. And I thought, well, that's a start, but we can do more than that. So, several things. I started thinking, well, what if it wasn't just Princeton, but why don't I call around some other universities and see what they're doing with their public lectures? And it turns out a lot of people were videotaping them, and nobody was doing anything with I'd call the University of Chicago. And the guy would say, it's funny you called. I was just sitting here looking at these tapes on my shelf, wondering what I was going to do with them. This is the guy in public affairs. So that's where the idea of the consortium came up. And then I started to think, well, what do? We start bicycling this stuff around like an access network, And I was willing to give it a try, but I thought, this is the digital age. Let's look and see if there's another solution. So we did a couple of things, and one of them involves your friends at Princeton Server Group. I said, first thing, let's just go digital. Enough of this. Let's just go digital. So Princeton Server Group has a neat little box where you can just line up your programming as MPEG-2 files, and then there's a web interface, and you just click, and you just line up your programs. I mean, it's beautifully simple. And then they came out with a transcoder, so it takes the MPEG-2 file, and you can get real Windows media in 2 different sizes, and you can get a WAV file if you just want the audio. So then I started playing around with this digital form of the collection that we had. And we had we started off with a small collection, but it had a nice representation of universities. So I didn't have a website yet. And just because I was fooling around with new media, I started with a blog. Simple, movable type. Does anybody here go to blogs or comment on blogs or participate in blogs? Yeah. I find actually very few people comment on this. But anyway, so I started playing around with blogs, and what blogs does is it gets you into that social networking in the internet. And then I thought, well, when I do get my website, and when we do actually launch this channel, I have no marketing budget, so why don't I try viral marketing? Let's see how that works. So I started the blog, and I started to sort of, link to other people's blogs and leaving comments here and there, and you begin to realize that you begin to find your world. It's like it's like moving to a new neighborhood, and you begin to sort of find the people who have the children the same age you have, It's like that, except it's virtual, and you very rarely meet these people, and it's a much bigger world out there. So I had this blog, and the blogging to me is a software. It doesn't have to be this kind of personal web journal revealing all the details of your life, et cetera. I had nothing to say about myself, but I wanted to see, I just wanted to sort of get this thing going on public lectures. So I was talking to the fellow and this is a collaborative effort because there's the entire support of the Princeton IT department behind this, and there's no one person there who has done all of these kinds of media that are represented in the University Channel project, but if you pull them all together, there's a real brain trust there, and they are the ones who helped me work it out, because I have no technical knowledge at all. Even when I was in TV, I had no technical knowledge. So the fellow who did the blog, I said, podcasting, what's this podcasting thing? This was around June of last year. So he said, well, it's an MP3 file, you got an RSS feed, and so how many people know what an RSS feed is? Really simple syndication. It is a way for people to subscribe to your website. So every time you update your website, it shows up on people's aggregators. So he said, all you have to do is tell your RSS feed that there's a little audio file there waiting to get out. And so I tried it, I posted a link to an MP3 file. And I don't know what I was expecting to happen, music to pop out or something. Nothing happened. I said, Raph, nothing's happening. The website looks exactly the same. And he goes off to, at that time it was called iPodder. I think now it's called Juice. So he went off to his little podcatcher website, and he said, presto, I'm listening to it now. Congratulations, you have just podcast. And I didn't even know I had done it, So then I got my website, courtesy of the Educational Technology Center at Princeton University. And this is also blogging software. And all of my each entry is just another blog entry. It just happens that when you open one, you get links to multimedia things. So with this, it's pretty straightforward. It's just chronological. It's almost like a magazine rack, and the newer ones just come on top, and then the older ones fall down to the bottom. If you want to search, there's a little, pretty handy search engine. And then here is the RSS feed. And then here is the podcast feed. So the first time I opened up an RSS feed, I said, huh?
What's that?
What am I supposed to do with this? I didn't know what to do. Everybody had to walk me through it. So what you do with an RSS feed is you take this URL, you go to one of these aggregators like, Bloglines, or, there's a million of them out there now. You stick it in there, and then every time you go to your account, it will tell you which pages have updated. So I use Bloglines just because it's what I happened to use the first time I used it. And I'm such a creature of habit, I don't. So here's Bloglines. Am I going to remember my ID and password? I don't know. Let's see. Maybe I could get lucky. Yeah. Okay, so this is just, a few of the blogs I happen to subscribe to, and the university channel is here. So you subscribe to the university channel. It'll tell you every entry that I made since the last time I went to this thing. And you click on that, and it takes you right back to the university channel site to the particular item. Now, my site is very much of a hybrid site because, for many reasons. One is it's a consortium of a lot of universities, and not every university does all its recording in the same way, and some prefer to podcast, and some prefer video, and some prefer to stream, and some prefer the downloads. So the files come to me in all kinds of ways, and so each entry is different. This particular one is just streaming video, and it's just streaming video. I mean, that's all it is. You go. It's the site acts like an index to all these streaming files, and you want to listen to one, you listen to one. This one happens to come from Colombia.
Thank you very much. It's truly a pleasure to be here, and a pleasure to be on the podium.
To all you media professionals out there, I apologize for the production quality, but we were interested in lowering the barrier of entry, and a lot of universities just don't invest in production quality, and we didn't want to shut them out. So that's why, and a lot of these are very straightforward, one person behind the podium thing. And it would be nice if there were a second camera to get the questions, but anyway, so we don't have that. There are some richer entries. Which tend to be the ones for which I actually hold the video assets, where I can then take that video file and strip the audio off of it, create an MP3 file. Then I stick the MP3 file in my content management system, and my little podcast feed here automatically reads it and then sends it to a podcatcher. Now, if you go to iTunes, for example, you go to the music store. Now, you can use other podcatchers too, but I have to say most of our traffic comes through iTunes. You look for University Channel. It comes up. You get a list of usually the top 40-some episodes that we have. If you actually subscribe to it, what you're doing is you're taking my podcast feed. If you subscribe to it, then in your podcast section of your iTunes, you get the full 80-some things that we have up there. You don't get them in your computer. They just tell you what it is. And then you can go and you can choose, Daniel Kurtzer, Dennis Ross, Bhattacharya, I don't know, Dan Benjamin, Steve Simon. I mean, you just pick what you want. And then you click Get, and then it will show up in your library. Now, in this podcast feed, we did, in October of last year, our first vodcast. Now you see this little thing there? That is a video file. Now, we did the first couple of vodcasts. Apple unveiled its video iPod on mid-October last year. By then, the website was already going. The podcast was going. So I said to the guys at OIT, ooh, can we feed a video file over this? He said, no problem. So within a week after this thing was unveiled, we had our first vodcast. So what you do then is you download the video, right? It shows up in your library. And I forgot to bring the little connector, but that's okay because it's already loaded up here. And then it shows up under video, and I'll pass this around. Video podcast, University Channel podcast, and then I think we've got one of these playing. I can't remember. It's in the middle of it. So you just pass that around so people can take a look. So that is a 1-hour video distributed in this way. How many people downloaded it? I don't know. It takes time to download, but not too much time. I mean, when I walked in here this evening, I started the download, and by the time I finished my sandwich, it was over. So, half an hour for a 1-hour video on a good night.
What kind of resolution? High quality?
Well, this is MPEG-4 compressed. Final Cut Pro, the latest version of Final Cut Pro now has like an iTunes export, default setting, in which it will compress to the ideal resolution for an iPod. You wouldn't want to take this and put it on a TV station, on a TV. We're still using high-resolution MPEG-2 for that. But our MPEG-2 files are too big. I can't feed them this way. And in fact, shortly after we did our first 2 vodcasts, we were featured on the front of the music store. And after that, and I'll show you the traffic. Okay, October, mid-October, there's a little spike there. And then all of a sudden in November, the iTunes Music Store features us, and it just shot up. And then they pulled us off the front page in December, and we went back down again. But then people discovered us on their own, and it went back up. By then I had registered us in Podzinger, Podfeed, Digital Podcast, Yahoo Podcast Directory. I mean, there's 12, 20 podcast directories now where you can find this stuff. So the downside to all of this, the problem with success, was that we started to choke the university's bandwidth. Now, your average audio podcast file is 20 megabytes, or I keep it down to 20 megabytes. The average 1-hour vodcast is 250 to 300. And with the number of subscribers we now have to the university channel, I mean, I estimate that we have now delivered about 250,000 full-length lectures since the beginning of this year, since that graph started shooting back up again. And we just don't have the bandwidth to do that with video. So I've had to pull back on the vodcasting until I can solve my bandwidth issues. What else?
Have you thought about posting them on Google Video or something like that?
Google Video. Google Video and I have been talking.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a couple of things with Google Video. One aspect of their operation is they host.
Right.
The other aspect of their operation is they search. You host. When they first unveiled the beta version of Google Video, I downloaded all the stuff I needed to download it, and I tried to upload my videos to Google Video. It was really buggy. And it cut off my videos at the knees. I mean, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. It didn't want to absorb an hour and a half lecture. So I got on the phone with them, and we were talking, and I said, do you really need me to upload? It's going to, first of all, it's a real waste of my time, but, so they said, no, we're working on this search thing. So I said, well, how does it work? Well, you have to create another feed, and so we're still working on the code for the Google video, the one that Google can read.
But they could host your long video.
Maybe yes, maybe no. There's some universities who don't want to let go of their assets, and they want to keep it in the EDU domain. Because one of the things that we decided to do in order to, well, first of all, these are public lectures. We might as well talk about digital rights. These are public lectures, and so people, before they are taped, we ask them to sign a release that says, yes, you can tape me and do with it what you want. Originally, we had a release form that said, yes, you can tape me, and then you may put it on the local access channel, you may show it within the Princeton campus, you may, give it to a commercial broadcaster, you may not, and then it listed so many options, and there's so many more were being invented every day. It didn't have podcast, it didn't have vodcast, it didn't have vlogging, that first of all, speakers were annoyed because they didn't want to bother with the list. And second of all, it couldn't keep up with the technology. So we simplified it, we cut it all down, so now that's all it says. And so once we record it, the university has the copyright, and the licensing model that we've decided to use is Creative Commons. So it is with attribution, non-commercial use, and non-derivative. And so the sensitive part about Google Video is if they start to host it, then is it a commercial use of the video? Because in fact, Google makes all of its money through, So anyway, Google, I still would love it for Google to search our site, to spider our site. And I was saying to Steve earlier, the key to search for us is going to be closed captioning, actually, because and we're not there yet because I don't have the wherewithal to transcribe everything. But once everything is transcribed, then you actually have the words that Google can use to search your video. And closed captioning now is also time-stamped, so it'll tell you where in the video he talks about Iraq, or some name. So once we solve this problem, we have a lot of work ahead of us, but once we solve this problem and we get the closed captioning and we marry it to the video, then what I would like to do is to create another feed which will not only feed you what I put new on the site, but will also feed the transcript out, so that there is a searchable text version of the item.
Yeah. Do you close caption your material now?
I don't. I just don't have the manpower to do it. People have said, "Oh, send it to Sri Lanka," but I'm not ready. There are other. I'm looking at several services, but what I have to do is, hit up a philanthropist who really believes in this.
Is there a burgeoning closed captioning industry in Sri Lanka?
No, transcription industry.
Transcription. Oh.
Yeah. What a lot of companies are doing is sending because it's now easy to send an audio file. They just send the audio file to an English-speaking country. The Philippines is big. Same people who do call centers. India, Sri Lanka, and they do transcription.
You send them an audio file and they send you back a transcript.
That's what I hear. I haven't gotten into it,
That's a quarter. A U.S. quarter.
Yeah.
Am I the only layperson here confused between what is a vlog
or a VOD
podcast?
Well, it's a subtle difference, I would say. A blog is just a website.
Right, and somebody entering their thoughts,
Right.
feelings, etc.
So to me, a vlog is a website with video. Now that can include streaming video. Now streaming video can't be downloaded. Well, it can, but it's not supposed to be downloaded. A vlog would give you downloadable video.
On purpose.
On purpose, yeah. And those are, a vodcast. Now I'm really confusing you. A vlog just has video on the site. A vodcast is video that you can actually download onto your player and carry around with you.
Who's your audience?
Well, it's interesting because people have asked me that from the very beginning, even before I had an audience, So who's my audience? The best anecdote that I have is that when I first thought of this idea, I took a camera down to the U store and shot the dean of the Wilson School talking about her new book, A New World Order. We didn't have a website at the time. I just took the video, I turned it around, and I put it on the Access channel, channel 27 for people who live in Princeton, and 7 if you're on campus. And she got so much feedback from that, from her neighbors, that she thought this was a great idea. So, to me, that's very valuable audience. I can go into my content management system, and I can find out who's going to the site.
Now, talk about this content management system. You said that is it software that you download? Is it just something to subscribe to?
Yeah, we're using open source, so it's absolutely free. But it's a blogging software, and there's free blogging software, and there's blogging software you pay for. And the difference really is in the amount of support you get for it. So
Mambo is what you're using?
Mambo is the old name. It's come out now under the name Joomla. I don't know what it means, but it's come out under the name Joomla, Joomla, and it is an updated version of this, and we haven't updated yet because it means taking the site down, and we want to make sure we got all the ducks in a row before we do that. So here is, okay, so who's watching? Sorry, to answer your question, who's watching? This is a list of sites that refer back to my site. So GNXP is Gene Expression. It's kind of a new media maven site. And they made a reference to the university channel yesterday. So the highest number of people come from them. Stingy Scholar is an academic website. And I can't remember if he's the one. There's some of these sites, you follow back to them and they are in different languages. I go back to Russian sites, I go back to Japanese, Korean sites. About 15% of my audience is overseas. There are a lot of other colleges. There are a lot of colleges who have, their libraries have linked to us. And every now and again, I'll go in and there'll be 30 people from one blackboard.edu site who are on it. So I figure a professor has just made an assignment.
Do you find anybody on campus? I'm in the education business too, so it's interesting. On campus users of this material, like, as an assignment or something to go listen or watch?
I honestly don't know. I don't know. I do know that a couple of the professors at the Wilson School have come up to me and they've said, oh, do you have so-and-so talking about his book? Do you have so-and-so talking about his book? And I might have, and if I don't, I can go find them usually, because people who just write books love to talk about them. So usually they're around somewhere. And then I know that they, from personal feedback, I know that they have then used bits of that for their class, either in class or as homework assignments. Because you get it from the horse's mouth. I mean, you actually you can actually hear Jeffrey Stone talking about freedom of speech in wartime, as opposed to just reading a précis or a book review of it. And then one or two of these guys, I don't see them up there now, but there's a couple of people who have been sort of reviewing, they blog. I mean, a lot of these people are running their own blogs. They blog, and they've been saying, you should have heard the Middle East ambassadors talking about peace after Hamas. They're just bickering among themselves. There's no hope. They're listening to this, and that's what we want. Yeah. And then, there's also one more site for feedback. Is iTunes itself runs a review function on it.
All the actual source material is all hosted here on campus.
No, it's a hybrid site. This site is hybrid.
But I mean, the video files and audio files themselves are sitting where?
It depends. The Columbia one is sitting in Columbia. Columbia, gave me permission to link to their streaming links. The same with Oxford. I've spent a lot of time on the phone with people. And in fact, there's nothing to stop me from linking to it anyway. It's just really out of courtesy that I call these people. And they usually like the idea. And then I tell them, well, listen, if you want to give me a dub of your high-resolution video, or if you want to FTP the file across to me, I can give you the additional forms of distribution that we offer, which is, if they don't already have a podcast, I'll strip the audio, I'll podcast it. We have an agreement with a consortium of universities that are delivering university channel programs over IPTV, because educators have begun to realize that more students bring PCs to school than TVs. So they're going to start delivering TV programs to them over their PCs. And that involves negotiations with, NBC and, everybody to allow these campuses to digitize the feed and feed it to students over their computers. So they can sit there and watch TV over their computers, and then they can do the multiple screen thing, and
I was just going to say Cornell is one of the universities that is going to be doing that, and it's very funny because if you have a computer, you can get the feed, and it's one price. It's the low price. If you have a television set that you want to watch cable television on, then you have to pay extra for the set-top box to translate the IPTV feed into something that the normal television will work. And that's the way Cornell is going to be distributing television signals to their doorway.
I came here hoping to find a framework, a reference. I'm not clear what the difference is in terms of utility or in terms of impact for the podcast or the vodcast versus the vlogs. I have stuff set up where there's video sitting on a website, and I like to use the term IPTV. Maybe that's incorrectly. We have our own streaming video television station, aren't we cool? But it's just sitting there, and it's not something that people subscribe to.
Right.
And they have to go there and get it.
Right.
I am either ignorant or just a curmudgeon, because I don't see the utility right now to anybody that I deal with in terms of having somebody, in terms of enticing somebody to come in and subscribe to stuff.
Well, it depends on who you're trying to reach. Since we're trying to reach the general public, subscription to us is a good model. And what iTunes does is not only make it easy to subscribe to our feed, but it'll push the latest lecture out. So it's like getting Town Topics on your driveway, whether you want it or not. It shows up. And it just gives us more recognition. It's for us a part of the marketing scheme. To me, that's the big difference between a vlog and a vodcast. Is one, everybody has to come to you, and with a vodcast, you can push it out to them. But as I say, vodcasts, the file sizes are still a big bump on the road to really smooth vodcasting.
So the automatic pushing of video is still a little bit of a technical hurdle right now?
It's not a technical hurdle, it's bandwidth. Yeah.
But the next step is it pushes it into the iPod. So you just hook up your iPod at night, you go to bed, you get up in the morning, you pop it out, you get on the train,
Right.
and without you doing anything or even knowing it existed, on your iPod are 5 new interesting things that you might want to watch.
We're just waiting for the terabyte iPod to come out, I guess, right?
Yeah, it won't be long. Mine is 60 gig. I mean, I've got 2 one-hour video programs on there and about 70 podcasts. And I've used less than 10% of that thing. So, yeah.
Hey, Dave, one of the things I said at the beginning of it, and consider that the open forum part of the meeting has begun, I assume. How would you use this in business? How would you, for us, a lot of us come from a corporate media background. I was just imagining here that, let's say you work for Merck, and the chairman of Merck has decided to do a bi-weekly vodcast, or podcast, but vodcast. So now the computers or little iPads or whatever Merck is using for their sales representatives, this is basically, they're going to want to have the chairman's statement to them to take to it, or they're going to want to have, here's the drugs in the pipeline, or whatever this guy says, they're going to want to have, and they can download it and they can take it in their car. If it's an audio thing, it'll be like playing the cassettes in the car. And that's one kind of thing. Or if you're, for example, you run a video store, and you then download the Time Warner podcast, because Time Warner is now giving you all its previews for the things that are going to be released in the next month. All the previews come down to your computer in the middle of the night. Now, there are a lot of other ways to do this, potentially, but this is one that seems to be pretty well established in terms of pushing these things out. So once people understand, well, okay, there's a channel here, there's software, and all the other people at the other end have to do is subscribe to this RSS feed. Now it becomes another way of communicating. And it's just not there yet. You and I'm struggling to grasp this, because when you were talking, I wrote down blogging software. Okay, so there's blogging software. You got to buy a blogging application. And then you talked about content management. So I'm not clear now. Is the blogging software
it's the same thing?
It's the same. Yeah. That's the same thing.
Yeah.
And that allows you to do what?
It allows me to publish. Very simply, me who knows no code at all.
Yeah. But you have to publish it somewhere, so you have to have your website set up first, right?
Right.
Or use somebody else's.
But you have to have a site that you're going to publish to. So
it's so. GoDaddy.com will sell you a website, a URL, for I think it's $10 a year or something like that. Yeah. I mean, it's become so easy. It's become so easy. There's just one more piece to the puzzle this is our friends at Princeton Server Group, who made this one possible. And this is the broadcast quality version. Now, this is for professional TV operations to download. It's not for your average PC user to download. But this is the way we're delivering to access channels across the United States. Because a lot of access channels are still very basic. They may still be playing off of VHS, etc. But most of them will have a computer, and most of them will have an internet connection. And what the Princeton Server Group people, in their generosity, have done is agreed to host all the video for all these access channels, including us. These are high-resolution MPEG-2 files, about 4 gigabytes each, hour and a half lectures of things like, this is my metadata solution because I haven't got a more elegant one. I open up a Word file with the same title in it. Things like the Berkman Center, discussion on internet and politics. And so they go into this, we give the access channel ID and password access to this shared server, to the FTP site. They go in, they want to hear Bill Gates speaking. They check the Word document to see, basically when, where, who, what, how. And then they FTP the file across.
So this isn't something they subscribe to. This isn't push.
This is different, but it's part of the big digital solution for me. Once I have that digital file, I can do all these things with it. That's the fun part. Well, sometimes it's not so fun. Sometimes the formats will drive you crazy, but so who downloads from here? The access channels will download from there, and we're talking them through it. It's like one station at a time across the United States. We're talking them through it. You go here, you download this way. You need this software to convert it to get it back onto the DVD, and play it out on your channel. The cable companies, Patriot Media, takes this and puts it on their VOD service. The IPTV distributors are taking out of this pool and putting it on their IPTV service, which goes out to 150 campuses or something around the country.
On-demand basis?
The one I'm working with is actually linear. They download it and then they just string them together.
So if you go to channel whatever on your IPTV, you'll get this.
Right.
You'll get a big
Right. I know they're working on a video on demand thing. So yeah, that's.
Where is this?
uc.princeton.edu.
Okay. So where is this going in the future? What do you see for this? What's your long-term business goal for this one? Or what's the,
My short-term business goal is funding, is long-term funding. The Wilson School was excited enough about this to help me create the prototype. But the university is not going to support this in the long term. So it's sort of a combination of support from all the members, plus, which is still not enough, plus, the grants and, all the other sort of nonprofit avenues, which I have yet to explore. So that's an immediate goal. I would like to find, that I need a chief architect. I need, I've found individual solutions to all of these forms of distribution, but I need a kind of an elegant solution. I need a lot of work on that front, particularly in the bandwidth area. Akamai is willing to sell me bandwidth, and that would be fine if I could find a donor who's willing to give me enough money to pay for that bandwidth, or we actually have to get the member universities together to figure out how to Akamize our own servers and mirror the material across the United States so that all of the traffic doesn't burden one university, which at the moment is Princeton University. So in the short term, that's my second short-term problem. In the long term, in the sort of more philosophical level, I want this to be global. I want to be able to accommodate, different languages. I mean, it's more of a management issue because, how are you going to manage all those languages, and how are you going to sort of keep tabs editorially on what is going on in all those languages? But because it is the video and audio medium and not not print, you can do it using. We could just replicate this website in other languages and make it available to the rest of the world that way. I'm also looking at satellite distribution for overseas because public television overseas is different from the American public television model, and a lot of them are still going to be stuck in the satellite downlink mode for quite a while still. And I should be able to take this I should be able to take this, plug it into an Earth station, and hit play, and feed it to the rest of the world. So, I'd like to do that. I mean, there are a lot of things which are just they just take time and work to manage properly. But I think and the technology is going to evolve too. I mean, am I going to start feeding this over cell phones? I don't know. I mean, I think the trick is to be able to respond to whatever twists and turns the industry might take. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of just simple grunt work, in terms of getting the universities sort of talking to each university about their production values. There's just a lot of work to be done on that level.
Have you talked to any other university video consortiums? I know that there were companies trying to sort of put together consortiums of universities. I guess to sell entertainment programming to college-oriented programming that wouldn't be broadcast, but that would be, say, closed-circuit concerts or things.
Yeah, I run into them at these conferences sometimes. I've talked to some. I have to say, with the technology where it is now, I'm not sure I need.
Actually, what I meant was, you have. I mean, this seems to be the way to distribute that stuff. So you could expand from lectures into other stuff, into other things. Which we're going to take a look at what some of those other things are in a moment.
We certainly could. I have been trying to keep tabs on the so-called citizen media movement, and to see what they are doing with video, because there are a bunch of these sites that I don't know if you came across Open Media Network, but certainly Google Video is going to be a big sort of kind of open site for this.
Google's the one that I have.
Open Media Network. And the thing about them is, while it's a grand experiment, we would be lost in it. It's those open sites are just being flooded with all kinds of stuff, good stuff and junk, and really objectionable stuff too. And so I want to be really careful about, I've thought about running this as a wiki.
Explain what that is?
A wiki, and I forget why it's called wiki, but it's a Hawaiian word for something. And thanks. And it is a kind of communal blogging. And the best known example of a wiki probably is Wikipedia. And I don't know how many of you have Googled something looking for an explanation of what it is, and it takes you to a Wikipedia entry. A wiki is run by a global sort of virtual community. Wikipedia is run by 3 people. It has, 80,000 entries or something like that. But what it is run on is the collective editing strength of the community. It's a real leap of faith, and you've probably seen in the newspaper that it gets tested. So, for example, the recent test was when they found out that people were editing unfavorable stuff out of the biographies of politicians. And they traced it back to the IP addresses, and they all came from Capitol Hill. So some people are saying, oh, that shows the wiki doesn't work, and then other people are saying, oh, that shows the wiki does work because they were caught at it. So, so I've thought about running this as a wiki in which the member universities become the contributors, but I've started experimenting with participating in other wikis, and I find them really cumbersome. So I'm not ready to open this up yet. I'm just afraid.
I can say, however, that if you go to Wikipedia, there are definitions of vodcast and podcast and video logging and things that they actually have entries for those, and they make pretty clear distinctions about which is what and how you determine and where they came from. So when you check that out, you could go to Wikipedia and search on log, and you would get an entry. Okay, I'm pretty sure. Again, even the disclaimer about my mind earlier. So
excuse me. Have you thought at all? I mean, you would think that there might be a commercial distance learning application. I mean, obviously, for speakers would want to see the action, but you know, what's?
Why don't I charge for this stuff?
Well, I mean, could you? Do you think there's a model there that could make it a paid subscription for a series of lectures?
There probably is. There are models of distance learning that have failed miserably, partly because, well, it was sort of an administrative issue. People will pay for distance learning if they get a degree at the end. You know, but they're not just going to pay for a 12-part series. Do you know what I mean? So iTunes is also running an interesting experiment with the podcast, and they're calling it iTunes U. And what it is they are offering to host university podcasts. Apple will host it, and they will create for each university an environment, an iTunes environment. Now, our stuff is available through, you go to the music store and you subscribe to our stuff, and under artist, it'll say Cornell West, and then under what album, it'll say Princeton University. But Stanford chose to go the other way, and they went with the gated community. So if you go to the music store and you type in Stanford, you don't get it. You have to go to Stanford, and then you open up Stanford on iTunes.
Are any of these paid services? Or is this
Well,
all free?
Stanford, for the moment, is free. But by becoming an iTunes publisher, they are reserving the right to eventually charge down the line. So.
Do you have to set up an account to get their material? So they know who's.
Yeah, they probably have better analytics than I do. That's work to be done. Analytics is, I just don't know that much about. I know what my traffic is, and I have these kind of ways of knowing little bits of information, like which domain, for example, whether it comes from Japan or, Ghana,
And there's nothing, in other words, if I wanted to put up a blog and link to your blog, I could do that.
There's nothing to stop.
There's nothing to stop. Do people ask permission for that, or typically, or do they just do it and then you notice in my case, traffic wouldn't spike at all. Probably go down.
Well, the whole basis for the whole basis for showing up on Google is how many people link to you.
Yeah.
So.
So you want more people to link to you, basically.
Yeah. When I first started and I typed University Channel, you would always get California State University Channel Islands. They would always come up on top, and then you'd have to go down, until people started to discover us and then link to us and that. So they pushed us up.
You just box yourself.
Google bombed myself. Yeah.
That'll work.
Now, when you say subscribe, what does that mean? That means that when the person goes online, automatically something comes in an email that says this is the latest offerings, or you have to go somewhere, or what does it mean?
Well, you need a well, we used to call them podcatchers, but that was several months ago. I don't know what the new name for it is.
Aggregation tool.
Yeah. You need some kind. Yeah, it's an RSS feed. The podcast feed is an RSS feed with Here, I'll open it up for you.
But my Yahoo does this for you. All these homepage things do it.
They do it now. Yeah, that's what I hear.
Oh,
So,
off online homepage doesn't do it. But I don't know. Well, maybe it does.
so if you're sort of geeky enough to want to parse this thing, this is my podcast feed, and whenever there is an MP3 enclosure, like this one, your aggregator, in this case iTunes, will say, oh, here's an MP3 file, I'll pick it up. It'll ignore the rest of this stuff on the page. Well, it'll include the author and the institution and the title. But basically, it'll ignore a lot of this code on the page. It'll say, oh, here's an MP3 file. I'll pick it up. And then the next time you go to your iTunes and your podcast subscription, and you go to the top, there it is.
Now,
Then you just hit play.
The user or the podcast? In other words, let's say a person wants to see one of the lectures. To do that, he physically or she physically has to go to your website first, right?
Nope. No. Okay, so yeah, iTunes. So here.
That's what I'm confused about. Like you just going on the net, now automatically a listing is coming to you, or you have to go to a website.
No. First you get the index.
Now, where does that come from?
From my RSS feed, from the
music store.
From that XML
Yeah, but
feed.
what do you have to do? You just gone online. Then what do you do?
You just run iTunes.
Oh, so you have to run iTunes.
Power up your computer, you
Right.
run iTunes or one of the million other programs.
Okay.
And then you
And
say,
the purpose of that
I want to
program
subscribe to this.
is to keep a list of the things you're interested in.
Okay.
Automatically go to all those sites and read that crazy feed and see what's new and different and deliver it to you all in one swing. And so that's what iTunes does here. So it keeps track for you of all things that are available from the places you're interested in and tells you what inputs in. So you don't have to go click on all of those websites and see what's new and different and manually do something to download it. iTunes does that for you.
The other thing
First time you have to
iTunes,
go. Yeah, and then you hit subscribe, and then it runs the push button.
the other thing iTunes does is if I vodcast, it has a little player in it, so it'll play it on your computer.
Now, someone could always still go to the channel website and go pick something to listen to. Yes or no?
Yeah, you don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to go to an aggregator. You can always go straight to the website if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can get NPR if you want to, all things considered. On the iTunes homepage on the podcasts, they list all of, they have all these podcasts where you can search it. It pops up. The first time it's there, and then there's a button next to it that says subscribe, and you subscribe, and from then on you can get, it will update automatically.
When you first went up, I subscribed to it. Like months ago when it was first there, because it had something with Paul Krugman. And I said, okay, well, I'll subscribe to this. But then it started downloading these hour-and-a-half things automatically. And I wasn't sure why it was doing that, because I would go...
iTunes has a default setting,
Yeah.
which will automatically download the most recent podcast, and you can disable that.
Yeah.
It's under preferences.
I don't know how I disabled it, but it stopped doing it. I'd be working, and all of a sudden, Richard, why is my band, what's going on? And I go, I'm downloading this thing from the university channel on iTunes. Because every time I opened iTunes, the first thing it would do would be start downloading my university channel podcasts. And I didn't know what was going on.
So this
I
was
wanted to have them available, but I didn't want them to download necessarily.
This video was shot and recorded by one of your own, the Telequest.
Is this an MPEG 2 file that's playing right now?
This is MPEG 4, because MPEG 4 is a much smaller file, and we can actually vodcast it. If we tried to vodcast MPEG 2, it would choke. It would just choke.
No, but what was it, Scott? What was it shot in?
This was shot on
DV cam.
DV cam.
DV cam, and then what's your process for digitizing DVCam? What's your production center like when you get a nice tape and you want to strip the audio out? So you just do everything in Final Cut?
No, DVCam, certainly if we need to edit it, we'll edit it in Final Cut Pro. If we need to export it for a vodcast, we use the now default iPod export option, which will give you a reasonable MPEG-4 file, like a 200 megabyte MPEG-4 file, and you can vodcast that. If I want to export for broadcast quality, higher resolution, I'll export in MPEG-2 with MPEG-2 audio.
But again, out of Final Cut?
Out of Final Cut with a stopover in, when you export, you get, I'm trying to remember which files. Fortunately, someone does most of this for me. You get the wrong kind of audio for the particular playback machine we have. So then I drag it into MPEG Streamclip, and I have to convert AC3 to AIF and then export it as MPEG-2 with MP2 audio.
So it's Final Cut, but then there's an external application that takes the...
Yeah, there are various external applications, depending on what people give me a lot of times.